Welcome, everybody. This is week 10, 10 weeks of crisis response conversations. And in case you missed the notification, this is going to be our final presentation of what we have titled the Crisis Response Conversation series. I'm curious, did anybody come to all 10 of them? Okay, see if open up the chat here. Anybody? Maybe not. Well, I think Samantha's probably been at all 10 of them. Well, we're glad you're here today. And 10 weeks, you have made it through 10 weeks. And I bet along about week 3, 4, 5, you were questioning whether or not you would survive. And here it is week 10 and you have survived. So that's a good thing to remember as we're talking today about stress, de-stressing in times of stress. I have to say that we've had some really good response and feedback from these sessions, and I have to credit all of you with some of that because, as you know, in each of these sessions, the second half is open discussion and participation by you. So you are part of why these have been so successful. So thank you. I have to begin with a disclaimer here. I am not a therapist. I'm not a mental health expert. I'm not a medical expert of any kind. I'm not anything except, as I was saying before we started the session, a mom who raised 6 kids that were born in 8.5 years. And I had them at home all the time. I was someone who, at one point in my life, I was working 6 jobs. I had my full-time career job, plus I had 4 part-time jobs, all at the same time. And I was also playing violin and or viola in 2 different orchestras. So that was 2 rehearsals a week. So while I'm not a medical expert or a mental health expert, maybe you could say I'm an expert at managing stress just from personal experience. I think I can say that in spite of some of the stress that I've endured over the years, I haven't looked quite as bad as this picture. Close sometimes, but not quite. Some of you may have attended a session or watched the recording of it, of a session that I've presented for the State Library. I've presented this for ALA, for a division of ILA, and elsewhere. It's called De-Stressing Your Job in Life, and that recording is still available on our website if you would want to see a fuller version of what I'm talking about today. That session was actually based on a book. I have a chapter in this book, and look at the title of this book, Job Stress and the Librarian. I think if you were to tell people that you're under a lot of stress and they would go, well, what do you do? And you said you were a librarian, they would probably laugh because it seems like an oxymoron to say that you're a librarian, but you're stressed. But it's true. There is a lot of stress with our job. We deal with the public librarians in particular. We deal with the public. So of course, there's going to be a lot of stress there. And right now you toss in this coronavirus, it's just a turbocharged mix of stress equation. So when we said we were going to do our final session about stress, I said, well, you know, I could probably do that because I've already got this other session and I can pull from some of that. And I already had several other things going right during work. So this is what I resorted to yesterday as my stress relief. This is not what I recommend, but true honesty, you know, true confessions here. Samantha, you can maybe cut this part out of the recording. Here I was with my giant-sized chocolate bar and a cup of coffee as I'm working on slides at the last minute. So, you know, rule number 1 about combating stress should probably be learn to say no, but I didn't. I said yes, and I'm fine with that because I think this will turn out okay. But I did come to my senses shortly after I took this picture, and I only ate 3 little bites of the chocolate and only had the 1 cup of coffee. So I don't think that was so bad. We all need a little indulgence from time to time. Yeah, I do like food, in case you're wondering. I especially like chocolate, so hence all these wonderful pictures here. But I put this on here because this makes me think about something that I saw a parallel with. If you're on social media, particularly Facebook, do you ever have friends who are always posting these recipes? And these recipes look so good, and people are commenting, oh, they look so good. Oh, I'm going to try that. Oh, I can't wait to try and taste that. But nobody who ever posts these has ever made the recipe. Am I the only one who has friends like that? No, Nancy's saying no. So her friends do this too. It's frustrating. Don't post a recipe unless you've tried it and can tell us that it's really as good as it looks. So I'm here to share with you about stress relief from information and activities and things that I have done. I've tried them. I can verify that they're good, that they work. I'm speaking from personal experience here. I have offered some of these suggestions to other people. Many of them are harried librarians, and they have said that these practices, when implemented, also work for them. So again, I just want to stress that what I'm sharing today is what I have personally tried and done to help combat stress. It's what I have also seen listed on many professional sites as recommendations for stress relief. The interesting thing about that is that when I was in some of my most stressful times, I didn't even think to look to see what are the recommendations of how to reduce stress. These are just things that I developed on my own, and they worked. So I share them. So today we are going to take the first of our hour session here and go through 10 verbs, actually 10 actions that you can do to help reduce stress during stressful times. And the good news is that these are 10 things you can do at any time, not just during a time of pandemic. So the first one is to scream. And no, I'm joking here. The first one is to laugh, but I saw this meme online and I thought this is really pretty good, because sometimes when you're under stress, you do just want to throw something or punch something or scream, right? And maybe that's okay. So we see the laughter in this because we realize the truth in it. But laughter actually is good medicine. You've heard that phrase before. And there have been several articles published recently about the topic of humor as a coping mechanism during the time of quarantine. This particular article appeared on March 16th, which was right before our state started to shut down. And this one talked about the importance of levity during crisis. And the article quotes a creator of a popular COVID meme, and this author says, "I think in times like this, memes, videos, etc., can help to make light of the situation." And the person goes on and says, "I do feel that some of these memes can cross the line and become inappropriate, but when used right, they can help to ease people's minds and help them put things into perspective." So here are a few of the memes that maybe you've seen some of these. You might have to be a certain age to appreciate this one. Nancy's laughing. So yeah, you you just gave away your age, Nancy, because you actually know who this person is. Many of the memes dealt with the toilet paper debacle, right? But then there was this story from CNN about this little 6-year-old boy who turned his otherwise lemonade stand into a joke-telling stand. And this was from the article I'm quoting. It says the young comedian is at his joke stand at 9:30 in the morning and stays there for about 45 minutes. And he goes back to do a matinee show in the afternoon. The young boy gets most of his witticisms from a kid's joke book called Laugh Out Loud Jokes for Kids. I wonder if he maybe got that from the library. One of his favorite jokes is, "What do you call a bear without any teeth?" A gummy bear, of course. So I thought that was really cute. I'm not a belly laugh kind of person. My kids always used to say I didn't have much sense of humor. And I said, yes, I do. I just appreciate good quality humor. And it has to be good humor before I really laugh. But I do know that, as I said earlier, laughter is good medicine. So find a reason to smile, or at least chuckle during a stressful situation. If you have to, find one of your favorite comedy films, watch a rerun of your favorite sitcom. And while not meaning to make light of anyone's woes or fears, I think that humor does provide an outlet. And as that meme creator that I quoted in the last slide said, when used right, humor can help ease people's minds and help them put things into perspective. So that's the next word I want to focus on, is perspective, or the verb is see. I think it's good to try to grab hold of perspective in a time of high stress. Try to see things from the proper perspective, or a realistic perspective. And over the course of the past several weeks, I've been reading, as much as I've had time for, a book about the 1918 pandemic. And it's been interesting, but one thing it's done, other than aside from telling me a lot of good historical information, but it has helped me to recall that people went through that. And what came after that time period? The Roaring 20s, it was great. Of course, ignore the part that the Great Depression followed shortly thereafter. But the point of it is, perspective is they went through that and they got through it. And Sam and I were talking earlier, she's struggling with some parenting things with a child teething right now. And that's always a very stressful time for a parent. But I just reminded her, think of all the parents who have gotten through that. And this too shall pass, as the saying goes. So the world did return to normal after that 1918 pandemic. So trying to get some perspective on things, I think, really does help. Just a week ago, I was reminded of the importance of this. A friend of mine, I've covered up her name and her picture, she posted something. This was on May 19th. She posted something on Facebook and she says, I wonder what was so stressful that day. And she was referencing something she had posted 9 years ago on the same date that said, I'm so glad the most stressful day of my entire life is over. And 9 years later, she couldn't even remember what she'd been talking about. So I think that's important. Again, perspective. And I commented to her, isn't it interesting that what we thought was a bad situation can soon become forgotten? And maybe some of you have had situations like that. But my response to her leads me to my next recommendation on managing stress, and that is writing. Well, I should have mentioned, I put this in at the last minute. I want to clarify that I'm not a Pollyanna kind of person. I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm a complete pessimist, but I would define myself as a realistic optimist. But I think most of the time you can find something good, even in negative situations, stressful situations. I know I've heard some people talking that during the quarantine, they said, I've realized that I had time to clean, and I realized I don't need so much stuff, and it really helped me reevaluate my life a little bit and what's important in my life. I've heard of families talking about the benefits they've had of eating together on a regular basis and not running all over creation with the different family schedules for everybody, and how nice that has been and how they think they want to continue that. So there have been some good things happening. I've seen stories of people that in my neighborhood especially, oh, my son is turning 14, and so we've got a sign in the front yard, and if you can all come by and honk and wave, that would just make his day. And people are pitching in and doing that. So that's kind of neat. I don't know if any of you have anything like that that's happened or that you can recall, and if you do, just share that in the chat if you don't mind. But what I started to say earlier is the third recommendation I have is to write. I've been keeping a journal on and off for years now, actually decades. I've always enjoyed writing, but during times of stress, the writing truly does become therapeutic for me. And it's a chance for me to spill out my feelings that I otherwise might not actually say. I'm kind of debating what to do with all these journals that are starting to stack up now. Part of me says, oh, just burn them before you die. But then another part of me thinks, oh, maybe my great grandkids will read them and learn a little bit more about their great grandmother. I don't know. But I do know that I enjoy going back and rereading some of them. And it's really interesting, kind of like that post that my friend made on Facebook the other day. I'll go back and reread some things I wrote during times of high stress where I really just thought, oh, I'm at the end of my rope. I just can't do this anymore. And it passes, and I can see from my writing how the situation worked itself out. So it's been very therapeutic for me. I recommend this to directors often that contact me and they're stressed. I say, have you tried writing, journaling your thoughts and feelings? And one of them did take me up on that. And she contacted me later and told me, you were so right. That is so helpful. So I can't always see the chat very easily as a presenter, but I don't know if many of you have ever done any journaling. Oh, Rebecca has her great grandmother's journal. Interesting. Anybody else in here journal? Paula has her mother's journal. Elaine keeps one. Nice. Sarah started doing it. I started being more intentional with my daily journaling. I don't do it every day during normal times, but I started doing it daily during the COVID thing because we're living history right now. that's kind of an awesome thought. And so I started writing, not what you can find in the national news, because I know that decades and years, century from now, they'll have that information. I'm writing my personal experiences and how it's affected me, and wrote about my woes of not being able to get a haircut. So we were talking about that earlier before some of you logged in. So just my feelings, how I was personally being affected. So yeah, I think journaling is a really good stress reliever. Number 4 is about the verb is to eat. Now, okay, how many of you, let's be honest here, true confessions, how many of you are guilty of this meme here? This is a little bit more humor. This is not exactly what I mean by eat, but what I mean, if I can get my cursor to work here, is to eat right. You've heard it from the medical experts, but I can vouch that it's true. When I eat a healthier, better diet, I feel healthier and better. When I indulge in too much junk food, when I overeat, when I stuff myself, I end up feeling miserable. I will be the first person to say I love food. I love carbs. I love chocolate. I love most anything that's baked. I adore donuts. I love ice cream. I think I could live off of ice cream. But when I overdo it with those things, I don't make the stress go away, and I just add to the burdens of it all. It really worsens my attitude. So I'm not saying you can't have your favorite chips, chocolate, or donuts, but just realize that having a better balanced diet really does help with mental well-being. I can say that with confidence, again, because of personal experience. I have tried this. I can vouch that it makes a positive difference in my mental and emotional well-being. You can find scientific and medical information and research to back this up. This is from a group known as Abbott, which is committed to healthy living. And they say eating a healthy diet can reduce the negative effects of stress on your body. That's one of their research scientists, a PhD, who said that. And you can see the quote here that I included. Building a healthy food prep habit into your daily or weekly routine can greatly improve your overall diet and eventually lead to reduced stress levels. So it's worth the effort. There's another really good source that PubMed quotes, although I think you'll have to do a little digging to find the actual article, but the abstract includes the statement, unhealthy eating patterns will only result in an increased level of stress. So even the experts say this is true. Number 5, again, remember, I'm not a doctor. I don't want to sound like your doctor, but exercise. I am a firm believer in this as a stress release mechanism. I experienced this when I was in an extremely high stress job. I didn't exercise, and I am the first person to say I don't like to exercise. And if you came to me and said, well, if you want to reduce your stress, you need to do 20 jumping jacks and 10 push-ups and 35 sit-ups every day, and it's going to reduce stress, I would say, forget it. I'll keep the stress. That's how much I hate exercise. But during that really high stress time, I developed cycling. And I am not an athletic person. You don't want me on your volleyball team. I was terrible at gym class. But I discovered cycling and fell in love with it. And I do like to walk as well. And when I walk or cycle, I can tell the difference it makes in my mental, just my overall thoughts, my emotional state. It's so noticeable, in fact, that there are days when my husband will say, you need to go outside and walk. You need to go ride your bike, because he can see the improvement that it makes in my attitude. So do what you can, stretch, even if it's just stretching. There are things that you can do even at your desk, the overhead stretch kind of stuff, and raising your legs while you're seated at your chair. Just little things like that can make a difference. So stretch, take a walk around the block, run down the street, do some air boxing, or better yet, get a boxing bag and punch away. Boy, talk about stress relief. I did kickboxing for a little bit, and that was great. I can vouch 100% that exercise makes me feel better. So according to the American Heart Association, regular physical activity can improve quality of life and relieve stress, tension, anxiety, and depression. This is an article from Harvard Health Publishing, their medical school. Regular aerobic exercise brings remarkable changes to your body, your metabolism, your heart, and your spirits. It has a unique capacity to exhilarate and relax, to provide stimulation and calm, to counter depression and dissipate stress. So it goes on, this article goes on to say, talk about how exercise can contend with problems as difficult as anxiety and depression. So I'm, again, a firm believer in that one. Number 6, rest. Rest here means a variety of things, not just trying to get a good night's sleep, because that may be difficult when you're under stress, you struggle to sleep. But it could also mean an extended break from whatever is stressing me, like a work situation or a person. Sometimes I have to take a break from a person. Maybe right now it's taking a break from the news, more about that in a minute. Sometimes it may just be a short rest. Maybe you just need a cat nap, or take your coffee breaks, coffee break. Maybe it's a water break for you. If you are having trouble getting a good night's sleep, I recommend you talk to your doctor to see about that. But more what I'm talking about when I say rest are these kinds of things. Take a rest from electronics. Unplug. I, again, vouch 100% that this works because I've done it. At least try to unplug for an hour a day. But for me, I try to take one entire day and stay off the computer and stay off TV, not check email, stay off of social media. It makes a huge positive difference in my life. Rest from the news. I think right now this is invaluable information and technique to battle stress. If you're a news junkie, just stop. Force yourself to stop. I'm not telling you to bury your head in the sand or hide under a rock, but just set a reasonable amount of time to learn what's happening and then stop. A little news right now goes a very long way. So maybe for you, you limit just to the headlines, or maybe just for an hour a day. But please don't sit hours and hours watching every news broadcast, reading every paper, searching the internet, listening to it. Just, again, set a timer if you have to and limit your time, or maybe considering having a no news day once a week. Sometimes you need to rest from work. If you've got vacation time, if you're blessed with that, take it, use it every now and then. If you don't have vacation time, at least take your designated break times. Take your lunch break. Take your 15-minute break during the day. And if you can get away from your desk, go away from your desk. If you can get out of the building, get out of the building. If you're not privileged to be able to do that, at least sit in a different area, maybe in a corner of the library instead of in front of your desk. Or if that's not a possibility, shut your computer down, put something over it, and open a book and, take a rest. Get your mind rested away from work. Sometimes you have to rest from the current scene, and that's kind of what I just mentioned when I said going to a different location in the library. But if you can go outside. A little time with nature, listening to birds, looking up the sky, soaking up some sun, breathing fresh air. That, again, does wonders to help alleviate stress. Again, I'm speaking from experience. Take a rest from your duties, whether those duties are as a librarian or a partner or a parent. Try to do a hobby, enjoy a craft, maybe play some music, and just take a rest from what your duties are. And try to take a rest from clutter. It's proven that clutter creates stress. So if you can tidy your desk or sort out that junk drawer that's been annoying you for years, clean out a closet, just a little decluttering really does work wonders. Number 7 here is to turn, and that's turn to others. Don't bear things alone. I have been recommending to the librarians in my district from the get-go of all of this that they have got to be in good communication with their boards, their city leaders and other city department heads, their county health department. Don't try to make these decisions, especially right now with the virus and the reopening and everything. Don't try to make those decisions alone. Consult with those people of those groups I just mentioned. Consult with other librarians in your area. Attend the office hours that all of your district consultants have been offering. And just, again, don't try to make these decisions and bear that weight of that kind of decision making by yourself. Whatever your stress is, find a group that can help. Turn to a friend, find somebody to talk to, your district consultant. We all were experts at being sounding boards. And Bonnie, I think you would reiterate that, yes, call us anytime, we will listen. And again, those other librarians in your area can be helpful as well. Number 8 is breathe. Now, I know that on just about every list that you look at for stress relief. It talks about breathing. The ALA Office for Human Resource Development and Recruitment, which is such a mouthful, they put out a nice little brochure, little pocket brochure, which I had on my desk earlier. Oh, here it is. Just this little bitty little pocket brochure that's all about stress. And you open it up and it has some tips and things. But one of their guidelines, it says to practice deep breathing to manage stress. And their advice is this: get in a comfortable position, take in a slow, deep breath through your nose to the count of 5. Hold that breath for another 5 counts, and then exhale through your mouth to the count of 5. Now, I told you these are all things I have tried and work. This is one that I do not do. I think it's because I had 6 kids, and moderated breathing techniques remind me of those breathing things you're supposed to do when you're having labor, having babies. This does not help me to relax. This just kind of stresses me out. But I do like going outside and just inhaling a big gulp of fresh air. And it clears my head, I think. So yeah, and I found this little meme that it's not a bad day, or it's just a bad day. It's not a bad life. And I think we need to remind ourselves with that. So breathing kind of ties in with what I talked about in that last slide about resting. Almost to the countdown here. Number 9 is to meditate. Take some time each day. Morning is preferable, and that's what works for me, to meditate. Now, this word may have different meaning for different people. For me, it's a spiritual activity, and even that may have different forms for different people. For some of us, it's prayer and devotional time. Others may find some type of yoga or thoughtfulness/mindfulness helpful. Maybe for you, it's reading a book of daily uplifting thoughts. Just 10 to 30 minutes in the morning can really have an influence on the rest of your day. I don't know if any of you do anything like this, but if you do, share that in the chat. And that takes us up to number 10, which I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. And that's, I have to say that just because this is number 10, in no way is implying that it's not an important thing. I put it here because it's a good wrap up to everything else. If you're truly having major issues with dealing with stress and depression, you've got to seek help, and there are organizations that can help. Your employer may have an employee assistance program. Your medical provider may have resources and offices that you can contact. So just do not bear these struggles and your feelings and fears alone. ALA's office, again, that long name for Human Resource Development and Recruitment, they have a page on their website that they partnered with ALA. ALA partnered with APA, which is the Allied Professional Association. And it's about 8 elements of wellness. I've got the URL up there in the corner. And if you go to that website, you'll see they have these listed as the 8 emotional elements. Notice that emotional is up there in the upper left hand. And if you click on that, it will take you to several resources. I've included the direct URL to this particular page, but I also took you through the path so that you could explore those other 8 elements of wellness, or the other 7, the total of 8, if you're interested in perusing those. That article that, or that page from ALA APA, they have on there one of the articles or references of ways to cope with stress. Look at this. Take deep breaths, stretch and meditate, try to eat healthy, exercise regularly, get plenty of sleep. Wow, did they copy off of me or what? Like I said, when I was going through a really high stress situation, I didn't have sense enough to see what some of the experts were saying, and I discovered everything that I do and did then and still do now on my own, but it works. And there's a reason it works, and there's a reason why the experts are saying this too. And you might go, yeah, I've heard all this before, but have you tried it? And what happened if you tried it? Have you tried multiple of these, and what's been the result? The last thing I want to leave you with before we go to the open session is to remember those wise words of the flight attendants, that you've got to put on your own oxygen mask before you help others. In other words, take care of yourself before you try to take care of your staff, your patrons, your library, because if you're not well, mentally, emotionally, physically, you're not going to be available to help anybody else. So try some of these techniques, seek professional help if needed, and let us know how things go. There is my direct contact information. And Samantha, I'm going to stop sharing because I think we're right at the halfway point, almost exactly. And I haven't been keeping up with the chat. I hope you have been.
Yeah, I had to step away for 1 minute to go, support my men folk who are, if you weren't here earlier, my better half is dealing with a teething 9-month-old who also is sick. But we do have some interesting things in the chat. The first thing I want to point out is that a surprising number of you all have chickens. And so I don't understand what part of chicken rearing is attached to librarianship, but most of you do seem to indicate that it is a stress relief for you, which I find surprising because I've been around chickens and I've mostly found them very stressful.
Yeah, we had chickens when my kids were little. I can't say that I found them to be a stress relief. They're actually kind of violent animals, can be anyway. They pick each other to death. Literally, they will do that. But yeah, it's good though that helps for you. I know a lot of people talk about pets being
pets. Yeah. So maybe if your chickens are like your pet.
Yeah, it's your pet. It's something to care for, and that's nice. So
Carol points out maybe the key difference: your chickens are nice, your neighbor's chickens are not.
Of course, kind of like your kids are cute and the neighbors aren't, right?
Yeah.
Tying back to something we were talking about earlier.
We have a few other folks with some kind of de-stressing ideas, watching a favorite stand-up comedian on YouTube, kind of getting to that laugh, that laugh moment. I wonder if some folks want to put their favorite comedians in the chat so that we can all get some inspiration, maybe with warnings if it's family friendly or not. Rosalind, I know I always say your name wrong. Rosalind in Knoxville says she's been coloring and playing Scrabble. So maybe find our friends on Scrabble Go. I know one of my friends just got me on Scrabble too.
That kind of goes back to what I was saying about getting a break, resting from your duties and doing a craft, a hobby of some kind. So coloring for a lot of people is very relaxing.
And someone else mentioned something which I had forgotten about. I used to watch a lot of TED Talks. So another way to kind of get, maybe get your brain spinning in a new direction, learn something new, educational YouTube channels. Yeah, so Sarah just put that in the chat as well.
I saw Angie posted that it's okay to feel bad. You can feel bad, you can feel grief and sadness and fear, and that's natural. Yeah, it is. And stress is natural. So don't feel like, especially if you're the director, I think directors tend to want to, buck up and be strong. I've got to lead the community. I've got to lead my staff, and I can't be weak and admit that I have stress. No, everybody goes through stress. And like Angie's saying, everybody has feelings of sadness and grief, and that's normal. And I think people respect you more when you admit to that, and say, I've really been struggling and I just need some time away. I need, even if that means just closing the door to your office for 30 minutes, if that's what it takes.
Angie, did you want to talk about the link you put in? I'm trying to scroll up and find it.
See, Glenda's saying, let's not forget the healing powers of Merlot. I was with some librarians yesterday and I said, so what do you all do to relieve stress? And one of them right off the bat didn't blink an eye. Wine, got to say it, just being honest. So in moderation, please. Okay.
Yeah. And then I think you maybe kind of talked about this too, but still getting together with people that you maybe normally would have seen. If someone says she gets together with her group monthly on Zoom, and it's not always the same group of people, but just a way to see familiar faces. I can't remember. This might have been. I'm looking for your video, Brienne. I just was in the yacht club discussion with you, but if you want to talk about the Draw or print a rainbow, breathing in as you trace the top of the color, breathing out as you trace back down as stress relief. And I think that's a really cute idea. Really helpful, potentially.
Elaine mentions the Bob Ross reruns.
Oh my.
I hadn't thought of that, and I haven't watched him since I was a kid, but I remember he had such a calming voice. So I can see how that would be relaxing and kind of a stress reliever.
And then another thing I picked up on in the chat, someone threw in some examples of kind of mindfulness or meditation apps. She mentions somebody named Dan Harris, who I'm not familiar with, but he's got a paid app apparently. And that kind of brings up another point that someone mentioned, which is often your employer does not cover this kind of sort of paid support. And so we're looking for ways that work for you that are going to meet your budget needs and your needs as well. If your employer is not able to help in that situation is important. If folks want to raise their hand and share anything else, would love to hear from other folks. We've got a lot of people on the call. Ooh, Angie, do you have a mic? Can you talk about app detox?
Yeah, I just saw that. I'm interested in what that is.
Okay, can you hear me? I don't have my headphones because I switched.
Yeah, just talk loudly.
Well, that won't be a problem. As you all know, if you've seen the thing about how COVID super spreaders are people who talk very loudly, I have some sad news about me. So app detox, if you're familiar with app detox, I use it on my phone all the time. And you basically set the limits for when you want your phone to turn off. So like it'll say at every night at 10:30, my phone turns off Twitter and Facebook. So every night at midnight, my phone you could literally set it for anything though. You could set it for any app on your phone and you could say, I want an hour break. I want 2 hours. And then when you try to open it, your phone is like, no, you said you didn't want to do that. No, it stops you from trying to do that. And I think also other apps like that, like for instance, not related to detox, that kind, but if you're familiar with like Plant Nanny. So Plant Nanny is an app that reminds you to drink water. And it tells you like, okay, like you have to drink this much more water. And the plant is you. You are the plant. So you are the plant that's being watered. And it kind of restructures your thinking. So at the beginning of all this, I bought a Fitbit. And I bought it specifically so that once an hour, it would tell me to get up and walk. That's literally, I turned it was like, do you want to track your period on this? No, I don't want to track. No, I don't want to, don't come into my house. Don't send me emails. Don't be creepy. But once an hour, it tells me get up and walk 250 steps. It vibrates on my wrist and tells me to stand up and walk 250 steps. So I think little reminders like that are helpful.
And Angie, I don't know if you saw everybody kind of cheers to you with their water when you talked about the Plant Nanny, but yeah, I drink a lot of water.
Well, and also, so the thing that really for the Fitbit that really got me was that it was turned. Do you guys remember? I'm very old now. Do you remember Tamagotchis? Remember those little Japanese pets, electronic pets, and you had to keep them alive? I told my husband that the Fitbit turned me into the Tamagotchi. And that's what Plant Nanny is. Plant Nanny is, you are just a plant that needs water and sunlight. That's all. And so we're going to keep reminding you. You can also buy, for those of you who don't know, you can buy a little like a light and you can put it on your water bottle. And if you don't drink in like an hour or 2 hours, it starts flashing to remind you to drink. So it lights up and is like, I'm reminding you to drink. So those kind of reminders are things that sometimes we forget for ourselves.
Angie, you mentioned something that just made me think of another thing. You said the word light. And I think a lot of people suffer from, I can't think what that disease is, where you get really depressed during winter months when there's not much sunlight.
Seasonal affective disorder.
Yes, and I don't know how it's been in the rest of the state, but almost this whole month has been pretty gloomy. Even when it wasn't raining and storming, it was just gloomy. And it was, a couple of weeks that we didn't see the sun.
It's still going on.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say I've been diagnosed with that, but I can definitely tell a difference in my mood when I don't go outside and soak up some sun. And maybe that's part of what the exercise is for me, because I like to exercise outside. I have a really nice gym in my basement, but I don't use it very often because it's kind of depressing to go to my basement. It's dark and it's cold, and it's nice down there, but it's dark and it's cold, and I want to go outside. So I think that's another thing about wellness, mental wellness, and stress relief is try to soak up some sunshine. Or Glenda says she has Misty has a happy light. That sounds fun. The little light boxes, yeah. So what do some?
I'm sorry. I will also say, if you are on a computer, not a device, and you want to turn things off. If you're not familiar, if you're using Chrome has an extension called Stay Focused, and it will also turn apps off. It will turn websites off for you. So for instance, when I'm trying to write my novel, I turn on Stay Focused, and it stops me from browsing the internet. So like, you turn on Stay Focused, and then you're like, I'm going to open Twitter for 5 minutes. And it's like, no, it's closed. You turned it off. You can't open it. So that's an extension on Chrome. If you use that, and it just turns the internet off. So
Yeah, I would just go turn the extension off. I'm not sure that would be helpful.
See, I grew up playing music and practicing music because I've been a music nerd since I was a little kid. And so I'm used to saying, okay, you've got this much time, you have to go sit and practice, and you just did nothing but practice. So I think that's kind of built into me. But some of these apps that you're describing, if you have a problem with staying focused on one thing at a time, that is very stressful when you're just, constantly jumping from one thing. And do not try to multitask, because talk about the grand misnomer. You can't multitask. Do the research on it. But if you have that issue, use these apps, or just get a good old-fashioned kitchen timer and set it. Okay, for the next 20 minutes, I am going to work on this report that's required, or I'm going to work on my reopening plan, and set that timer for 20 minutes and vow that I'm going to sit here. Or for the next 20 minutes, I am not checking Facebook. I'm not going to look at the news headlines, whatever it is that's stressing you or diverting you. Just set a timer if you have to.
I do the timer technique a lot, and even, turn my phone, upside down like this, maybe put a sticky note over the time on my computer and just say, okay, I'm going to work on this for 20 minutes. If that's all my brain has room for. And then often I find once I've gotten through that 20 minutes, I can kind of move beyond that even, but just to say, all right, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I wanted to mention something my father-in-law told me about. He's in the healthcare profession, and shared an example of, just focusing on the here and now. And I think you kind of talked about that too, but to just say, okay, what's on my radar for the next 5 minutes? And I sometimes think 5 minutes feels like a long time. What's on my radar for the next 2 minutes? Can I get through the next 2 minutes? Can I get through the next 5 minutes? And I'm just really focus on that. And maybe eventually the amount of time you can handle gets longer. But as Angie said, grief and depression and sadness, these are all real. As you said too, these are all real and valid emotions and feelings. And so trying to cope with them in whatever way you can is important, and whatever amount of time you can. Yeah. Someone in the chat mentions the Pomodoro project management technique, and I don't know, Barry or Cassie, do you have a mic to unmute and give us kind of the high level overview about that?
Yeah, I can talk about it. So it's just, you set a timer for a certain amount of time that you're going to focus on a task. And then when it goes off, you take a break. And it's pretty basic. I think there's some more details that you can go into it, but it's just kind of what we've been talking about, the staying focused, and then also making sure to take breaks when you need to. I don't know if Ferry has more to add.
It was a 25-minute session, and I remember that was kind of an odd number to pick instead of a half hour or 20 minutes, like 5 minutes, and then take a 5-minute break. And they called it Pomodoro because the guy that started it in Italy had a tomato-shaped timer. And Pomodoro is Italian for tomato.
The tomato technique. Good to remember. Yeah, I sometimes think half an hour feels like a long time, but 25 minutes feels manageable, right? So sometimes we're kind of looking for those little things to do. 25 minutes and a 5-minute break is good.
And that kind of reminds me of when I was talking about the importance of exercise and just the benefits of that. When you do the research on that, all of the people writing about it will say, you don't have to go out and do this 30-minute sprint. If you walk for 20 minutes, and if that seems too long, do it in 2 10-minute sessions. And I have a friend who is really trying to refocus her thoughts and get herself in a little bit better physical shape as well, so emotional and physical, and she's doing it by walking. And so she'll post to help keep herself accountable, I finished walk number 1, and she's just doing little 10-minute walks, and then she'll say, I finished walk number 2, and then later she'll post, and I just finished my 3rd walk of the day. And so it's kind of nice. So those of us who see, hey, I didn't see that you ever did walks 2 and 3, what happened? Like I said, it's her little accountability, if you will, but she breaks it into segments, and I think that's a good way to try to get in some of these, whether it's a task or taking a break or getting in the exercise, to break it into those smaller chunks.
And this is Angie, and I'll say too, for those of you that were in the summer reading sessions or have watched them, a thing I really have stressed, and I want to just keep bringing up with all of you, is I think that we can all agree that Frozen 2 was an unmitigated disaster. No, but I always say that the song from Frozen is what I want you to keep in mind. The only thing you can do is the next right thing, right? Like, you can't see 800 moves ahead. We're not playing 3-dimensional Star Trek chess. All you can do is the next right thing. That's all you can concentrate on, is the next right thing. What is the next right thing to do in this situation? And so that is all mindfulness and coming back to being present in this moment. So it also means that kind of emotional management. And that's what I've been telling all of you about. Like, don't think about what this is going to look like in August, what's summer reading going to be like in July. Like, we're still in May. So that, I think, being present in the present moment also helps relieve stress, because you're not living in something you can't control. You can't control that. You can only control the next right thing, the next decision.
And I think, Angie, that's a helpful thing to think about too. We've got some folks saying in the chat, just the stress of feeling pressure to reopen and knowing that there's a lot out of your hands there. But as much as you can, just do that next right thing for you and your library, and also know that what's next right for you is not the next right thing for someone else. And so to be mindful of how you're not pressuring others to do the same thing you're doing. Angie, we also have a couple of Let It Go references in the chat. Also, timeless wisdom from the Frozen franchise.
Also good advice. And I use that as another example too. In the first movie, when she says that, she is freed from what everybody else is saying. You got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. There's a reason kids love singing that song, because all of their life is so prescribed. And in this moment, she gets to say no. I stop the prescription. I stop you telling me what to do. I let that go. That's empowering to children, and it's empowering to us in times of crisis. But that's what great art does. Yeah. I said let it go is great art, and I'm not sorry.
Rosalind is just commenting about the letting go, that there are some things that are out of our control. And the virus is out of our control.
Mm-hmm.
And she references that she knows her board is going to make decisions and she's going to have to deal with it. It's out of her control. So you go with the flow, as the old saying goes, to keep quoting these quotes and colloquialisms. But sometimes those of you that are dealing with the pressure of people wanting you to reopen before you feel it's wise to reopen, we've said this in several sessions, whether it's in the office hours sessions or the session we did last week, the crisis response conversation about policies, procedures. If you have your why in place, it can really take some of that pressure off. This is why we are not reopening, because of X, Y, and Z. We cannot reopen yet. Or on the flip side, if you had the people fussing at you because you're reopening too soon, this is why we felt we could reopen, and these are the steps we considered, and you've got your why in place. And again, don't make these decisions on your own. Talk with your city, talk with other librarians. I just had a meeting yesterday with some librarians, and came to this session, had to leave early from a countywide session where the librarians were talking amongst themselves, trying to just kind of coordinate what they're all doing so that they can kind of be a united front, if you will, in responding to some of those pressures.
And I would add that if you feel really stressed once you start to open and you don't think it's going as well as you could hope your phased reopening would, take that step back. Know that you can go backwards just as well as you can go forwards. And if you need to close up a little bit for a week or so, go ahead and do it. Your patrons are going to understand. And hopefully that relieves some of that building stress.
Mm-hmm. Someone else mentioned some timeless Angie Manfredi wisdom in the chat, which is, I think, also related to what Marianne said, with maybe point number 8 or 9. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And that we're going to be in this for a while, and that's why it's extra important to put your own oxygen mask on first.
Yeah, I'm glad you've all internalized that after me saying it literally 8,000 times. Marathon, not a sprint, marathon, not a sprint, marathon, not a sprint. Yeah. Blank.
Yeah, and so you can't, we're still running. Like Angie first told us it was a marathon, not a sprint, however many weeks ago. But that doesn't mean it's over. Like, we acknowledge that it was a marathon, but that means we're in it, right? So put your own oxygen mask on, and especially now that you're in a position where you need to be interacting with more people who are probably going to be really stressed. I hope some of these techniques can help you take care of yourself mentally and physically too.
One other thing we didn't really mention, unless it came up in the chat and I didn't get to see it, but I think a lot of causes of stress are the what ifs that we contemplate. And so often those what ifs never even happen. And we wear ourselves out mentally, emotionally, sometimes even physically, fretting over these scenarios that we worry about and we fret about and we stress over, and they don't happen. So remind yourself of that. If you're thinking, oh, it's just going to be a disaster when everything opens, then, like I said, put things in perspective. Look at some of the libraries that have already reopened, and I have a few in my district that have already been open for a couple of weeks, and they're all telling me, you know what, it's going so much better than I thought. The people are respectful, they're following the rules, we haven't had any issues. So a lot of the things that they were worried about are not happening. So yeah, as Kim says, the what if monster. So try not to let that become too burdensome either.
I have found that it actually really helps me to articulate those what ifs. So I'm worried, and then, well, what am I worried about? Well, what if this baby never naps? That's one I say a lot. And you guys have heard me talking about my son for quite a while now. And then it's like, well, so what? He's grumpy. Like, okay, you've got a grumpy kid on your hands. Like, what if this, what if that? And then just to say, okay, follow it to its conclusion. And sometimes it's a horrible conclusion, but for me, sometimes it even helps to just articulate it. And there was something in the chat, I think it was, remember who owns the problem. And so in some cases, you can say, well, this might be a problem, but it's not my problem. And someone put my favorite phrase, Helen, not my circus, not my monkeys. And I've been saying that one so much. I love that phrase. I think it's a translation from a Polish phrase or something. Not my circus, not my monkeys. And so, yeah, we can worry about this. We can worry till we're blue. But we can also just take a step back and say, can't do anything.
I love that saying. Unfortunately, it's rare that I get to use it because it usually is my circus or my monkeys.
They're very cute monkeys, Nancy.
Yeah, they are.
Sometimes.
And very hardworking monkeys.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one thing a lot of people have realized from the time of quarantine is that they appreciated having less stressful schedules. And then people talk about what's the new normal going to be. And I think we're going to see a lot more people refraining from returning to those back-to-back drive here, drive there, get to this meeting, get to that event, get to this commitment. I think we're going to see less of that in the new normal. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. I will say that if another family member asks me to do a Zoom call, I will stab them with a fork. No more Zoom calls in the evening.
Also, Zoom fatigue is real. If you haven't seen the articles about that, there's real
Mhm.
about like how it matters using a camera and your reflection. And so that's a real thing. It's a mental thing. So it's okay to think that. I wanted to say, I saw Cynthia in the chat, you said there are parents who are frustrated that kids don't get a browse. I think that's a thing that's going to be universal among all people. I'm sure there's going to be senior citizens who are like, I want to see every large print book and I want you to let me touch them all. Well, that's not going to happen. I don't know what to tell you, but I think now's the time also to think. I've seen some libraries who have taken the space and they've created like a browsable 20 books that are out front, the 20 new books and the 10 new books, or thinking if you could make like a flip book or some, print out a handout thing. I've seen some libraries who put them up, who've printed out the covers of new books and put them in the windows of the library so that you see the covers of the new books in the windows or hanging up on the walls. I think there's a lot of greatness in asking people to use our digital resources. And I think there's also, it's understandable that they might be frustrated or tired of that. And so looking at ways we could say, here we go, or some of you have heard me talk in some of the youth chats about making book bundles, being like, here's a bundle of 5 books about monsters, here's a bundle of 5 books about trucks.
And 5 mysteries, 5 Amish books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Helen has a question in the chat, just kind of logistically, are people doing closed stacks right now? Kind of like what Angie's describing, maybe book bundles or YA?
I'm hearing mixed. Those libraries that are open, some of them are only opening the foyer area and doing what we have been telling them, just put some new books on display front facing so that people don't have to thumb through them. They can just see it and grab it and go. Or they're allowing limited browsing, maybe to just certain sections of the library.
You could do a display, do judge this book by its cover. Just grab it, don't read the back. Maybe
It's creative.
tape the summary to the front cover or something, some way so that people are doing minimal
You could do
touching.
the blind date with the book program.
Well, yeah, right, yeah. But then you have to touch all the books to wrap them up.
I think this is a real time to think about genre find. So I think that if you're not going to put them in a bundle, but you're worried about everybody touching them, I think if you set up thing that's like, these are the romances, these are the Westerns, these are the large print books, these are the mysteries, these are the thrillers, just take them. And I think also clearly many of you have heard me say the other words of wisdom that I hope you all say often to children, no matter their ages, which is you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. And that applies for adults too. I wish that you could stand here for 45 minutes and look at the back of every book, but that is not the world we live in right now. So pick 2 thrillers. If you don't like them, I have great news. You didn't buy them, just bring them back. We'll try 2 more. So I think that's also a way for you to promote your online reader advisories. If you guys, there's also, you can have patrons fill out, I used to do this for the teens at the library I worked at, you can have them fill out a reader interest survey. Say, tell me 5 books you really liked, tell me one genre, tell me your favorite author, and I'll pick 3 that you'll like as well. So this is really a time to flex those readers advisory muscles. Like, this is a time to make use of that.
We just have a couple minutes left. I want to just make a couple points about cleanliness too. We're not the experts in this. There are lots of resources from the American Library Association and other places with the most up-to-date research on how long the virus is living and what some best practices are for cleaning and stuff. And someone's also made the point that, you're out and about, browsing the cereal section or whatever the case might be, and someone might have picked something up in the grocery store and put it back down. And it's true, there's going to be risk everywhere, but I know I saw somebody pawing every box of blueberries in the grocery store, and I did not buy blueberries that day, just as an example. It's going to be a new normal for our whole culture and society, right? That folks are getting used to new things. So